Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and more Path of Exile 2 talk. Today I'm covering the important topic that I think a lot of people are going to start to experience about now. That early to mid game bit where you're hunting down the current set of waystone tiers to unlock your Atlas skill points. Progressing through the end game from green to yellow to finally red maps, where loot gets really good and obviously the danger ramps too. The problem here is that a lot of people are going to find themselves starved of waystones, spending a lot of gold to reforge them into higher tiers, and basically, initially, you're just not getting enough drops. These things, alongside specific tips, those are what I'm going to talk about, so let's get into it. Let's begin with that term, yellow, red maps. What does that actually mean? Basically, there's three original categories. It's kind of like a legacy term from the original game, PoE 1. If you've got maps from say 1 to 5, that'd be like a green map. 6 to 10 would be something like a yellow map. 10 and 11 and above, that'd be a red map, because the highest tier maps you're going to find in this early access are tier 15. So that's the hardest content we can do in terms of mapping specifically. The higher tiers you go with these waystones, the better drops and the bigger potential loot that you can get. Maximizing this through juicing your maps, through the waystone specifically, as well as multiple tablets circling the maps that you're clearing, that is really how to do it. But there are many steps between then and now, so let's start with each step. Firstly, let's talk about the skill tree. You're not going to have a ton of points to start with. Each time you progress the little quest, you're going to get 2 more points, and it starts pretty hefty where you've got to do 10 tier 1s, 10 tier 2s, 10 tier 3s, and so on and so on. And so yes, eventually it starts to reduce to 8 and then 6 and so on as you get into the harder difficulties of these maps. What you need to do initially with those first few points is massively increase the amount of waystones you're actually going to find and the actual rarity of them. The higher tier waystones you regularly find, the less you have to reforge them, the less you're going to be starved of them. So these nodes that increase your percent chance to get a tier higher is one of the most important things you can get. That concept goes hand in hand with the concept of quantity of waystones. So you want rarity and quantity of waystones as the first points you're getting. So with your first points, I would recommend you go straight to this constant crossroads, so you're getting a much bigger quantity. Then with the next points, you want to pick up all of the higher tier waystone nodes that give you that 10% increase. There's 5 of them you can get here pretty quick. I recommend coming around to the left to go through Teeming Horde, because the number of monster packs in your maps means more drops, more loot, more potential. And as you path around here, you're going to get precursor influence, meaning you're going to get that flat 30% increased quantity of precursor tablets, which are also super important for juicing your maps, as we're about to explain. After that, I start to work my way down this way, increasing the rarity of all items we find by massive numbers, especially with Fortunate Path, where we get that 100% increase on the rarity of waystones. Next, we're going to path around to the high road, giving them a 20% chance to be a higher tier. And then we're going to path actually down here, where we get 3 nodes that increase the quantity of waystones again. And the all-important keystone, rare and unique monsters, will have 1 to 2 additional modifiers, which will greatly increase the potential waystone drops and drops in general. After that, I'm going to come around to Grueling Journey, Unlucky Pillage. Then I'll come around to the left side, going for Rising Danger and increasing difficulty through nodes on this side. That's the order that I think is really important and basically why. So let's talk about maximizing your progression and juicing as a concept. The most important thing you can do is path to an optimal location. So over here, there's 2 towers pretty close to each other. Each one that I complete and then click on, I can put a tablet in. And if I maximize the value of that tablet, I could increase the rarity of drops and the quantity of drops as well. So if I hover over nodes close to this tower, you can see I did exactly that. 19% increased magic monsters, 13% increased waystones found in the area. Let's say the nodes about here are in range of this tower, and this tower, and this tower, and this tower. Imagine compounding a tablet in each of these towers, so everything in the middle here is getting maximum value. That's from specifically tablets. So with this concept of trying to have one tower always with a tablet active near the nodes that you're doing, you need to think about the pathing. So let's say I'm aiming down here and I can see there's a bunch of towers. I want to get these towers with tablets active before I'm clearing all the maps of their value. So I want to path over here using the minimum relevant nodes possible. Let's pretend this has a breach on it. Let's pretend this has a boss on it. Then I would intentionally go this way to avoid wasting those before hitting the tower to then juice up those nodes and then go do that map. By increasing the quantity of items found, by increasing the amount of waystones found, by increasing the general rarity of what's dropped, you're going to get more waystones, higher tier waystones. So towers and tablets become vital. And very quickly, as you start to invest in your towers and making sure they're active for the maps you're doing, you get more tablet drops, so you're able to sustain that. Now let's also talk about specific targets and quote-unquote juicing maps even further. The idea is pretty simple. The more difficult the map, the more rewarding it is as a general rule. So let's take this random waystone at tier 8. Let's say I want to make this as valuable as possible. So I'll go to my currency and I'll turn it into a magic. So now it has a 70% chance for waystones to drop compared to 0 increase, at the cost of monsters getting a benefit. Let's then put an orb of augmentation on that to give it a second thing. Now I have an increased amount of magic chests. Awesome, no downside. Let's then use a regal to make this even better, and now we see that we have additional packs of enemies, which means additional chances for drops. It's also worth putting exalts on these things to further enhance things. Now we can see the waystone drop has gone up to 150, but we're dealing with chill ground patches. So we take this potent waystone and try to use it on the most valuable nodes we can find. So I wouldn't want to put it here because there's nothing going on here, but I would want to put it on a boss node because these are the most valuable things you can do. Bosses have the best drops. They have the biggest pool of drops, and then as you juice that up by using towers and the tablets, and obviously the waystones as well, you increase the chance of drops, quantity of drops, and rarity of those drops. And by killing bosses that have all these extra modifiers, you might get not one, but multiple waystones of higher tier that you can rely upon. You might get tablets, you might get exalteds and other stuff. By using this simple method, this is how I got my first perfect jeweler's orb, which by the way is valued right now, as I sold it anyway, for about 160 exalted orbs. With that I was able to buy an incredible weapon, a new chest piece, and refine my gear set, and I still have like 100 exalteds left after that. This has ultimately made me significantly stronger and faster, so I'm clearing the maps quicker, getting more drops, and able to take on bigger challenges. And like I said, bigger challenge means bigger rewards. So what would be better than just a boss node to really commit something juiced like this? Well, it'd be a boss node and something else. This has a ritual, but this would be even better. This is a corrupted location, and corrupted locations essentially add one monster level. There's another way you can get an extra monster level, and that's by using irradiated maps like this one. As you can see, it increases the monster level by 1. If you could get an irradiated and corrupted node that also has a boss node on it, that'd be like the dream. Then you juice that up as much as you can with tablets on towers in range, and the waystone that you put in initially. So that's the concept, but now we're talking about here's how to make things really hard so the drops are better. But how do you survive these things, especially if we're doing other events and mechanics too? Like ritual is incredibly dangerous on a super juiced map. Some of these maps are really rough. You know, you've got an open field, awesome. Different story in tight corridors where the AoE is unavoidable. So the order you complete the mechanics of the map is very important. Let's say you're going into a boss map, you've really juiced it up with all the different stuff. You need to succeed, so don't die. If you're low on waystones or tablets, you can't lose this map. So if taking 10 minutes compared to 5 minutes means you don't die, then go slower. That's my biggest advice. Focus on the rares and the main objectives before you do any special events. So, ignore the essence enemies, the breach, the rituals, avoid them. Go complete the map by killing the specific rares and the boss on that map too if you're doing that. This way, if anything goes wrong when you attempt that ritual later, you've already completed the map, so if you die there, it doesn't matter, you already got the rewards. And yes, this is definitely inefficient mapping time-wise, but as I just explained, going slower to not waste the map if it's an important clear for you in that moment for the rewards you need, then this is a massively impactful way to increase the odds that it works. The events, particularly breach, pre-patch update, and rituals in a tight environment can completely backfire on you and lead to sudden death. As a little bonus tip, you know how you die and you lose about 10% of your XP if you do? If you've just leveled up, that can be a great time to take the biggest risks because you won't actually lose any XP, you don't de-level. In terms of making yourself as survivable as possible, as always, you need to make sure that you've got max res in everything. I'm lacking a tiny bit in chaos, just barely under the cap, so I am running a charm. That's a bare minimum. Then running a good mix of armor, evasion, and energy shield if that's relevant to you is also really helpful. Different builds will rely on different things though. Energy shield means very little to me, but armor and evasion are massive. That is because I'm running something cool called sorcery ward. It's a unique thing that the witchhunter gets. Basically, it cuts my armor and evasion rating in half, but provides me with this juicy shield. This is over 3,000 health of any element damage, and it just tanks that for me, protecting my health. So I wanted to make sure that I had enough armor and evasion to tank that 50% before I started using sorcery ward. And now that I have enough of those, I get this really juicy shield and the protection of the armor and evasion, mostly preventing one-shots and nasty bursts of damage. So your build and the setup that you have is going to really impact your survivability, of course. And I just want to highlight that there are a few special uniques that can really help with this stuff. Like take the Cloak of Flame. It gives me massive fire resistance, but it means 40% of the physical damage I take is actually fire damage instead. So I'd want to increase, say, the max potential of my fire resistance by using nodes on, say, the skill tree like Prism Guard, buffering me against fire damage as much as possible in this case. This can be a really clever trick, and quite a few different builds use this kind of thing, converting damage to a different type that they become very resistant to. In the true endgame, these tricks become more and more important, whether it's one that you're using through gear like that, or maybe a class trick like Sorcery Ward with Witchhunter Mercenary. Now on the topic of different activities, just for some tips for each, let's have Delirium. This is a pretty important one because for the resources you get from Delirium, leading to some great benefits. So if I show you my amulet, it's got this allocation of the skill Blur, which gives me 4% movement speed, 20% increased evasion rating, and also some dex. This notable is active despite me not going near it. That's what it is to anoint. So maybe I want something else like extra mana regen with movement speed. I could have anointed Step Like Mist instead. If you find something you like, hold Alt while you hover over it, and then you can see what you need. This would need 2 Despair and then 1 Ire, so 2 blue, 1 red. The resources you get from Delirium just drop. There's the common, easier ones, then as you go into higher tier, the more rare ones. And all you need to do to activate this is pull one of them out, right click it, and that brings up the system. So you put the amulet in, and then you put the colors in the right order to give yourself whatever it is you're looking for. And so yeah, it's pretty simple. Next, let's talk about Breach. My advice on this one is to open the hand portal when you're ready, and then kill all the mobs that are going to rush you as you begin that spawn. Then begin moving to the edge of the circle, going in any direction where you think you can kill more enemies without running around or, wasting time. I like to start in the center, move outward in a direction, then move back and rush to a different open area where more mobs will be condensed in a quick route ideally. Just make sure as you're going to step on all those extra mini hands for extra drops they provide. Next we have excavations. For this I just would say check if there's any negatives you can't deal with. Like say all my damage is fire, right? So if one of these says it makes the enemies immune to fire, I wouldn't want that one. Otherwise I recommend popping literally as many as you can and make sure you get the rares where possible. And don't forget that vendors update when you level up, so it's always worth coming to your hideout, checking in with the vendors and seeing what they sell if anything, relevant has come up. Lastly, for ritual, my advice on this one is to not do them if they're in really tight spaces and you don't think you can kill everything in the first use of ability. Super dangerous. Rituals will also respawn everything killed within range of the ritual, so pulling enemies into it for extra stacking, that's an option. And don't forget when you're in the menu actually buying stuff with tribute, you can always choose to defer rewards. So if there's something there you want but you don't have enough tribute right now, you could use the defer menu to make sure it shows up in the next ritual spawn, and then for cheaper too. So it's a pretty good thing to do. But there you have it. That's my overview of early to mid game mapping and honestly late game too. How to maximize your end game experience with all those tricks. I've completely stopped running out of waystones for my tier and beyond, so it's really nice, and obviously I'm starting to get some decent drops at this point. It really only gets better though. It starts pretty rough, but as you get higher tier, the drops get better. It's just you can't rush that since the skill points come from the Atlas, and that wants you to lower tiers for a while. I hope this overview helps you though, and if you guys have any extra tips about any of it, then drop it in the comments. For now though, I've been Hollow, you've been you, thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.